Agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any announcements? I will entertain any announcements before we start. All right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written for April 9th, 2026?
So moved.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda for April 9th, 2026, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for February 2026 meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the, on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes for February 2026 meeting, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is we'll open the floor for public comment. And we will close public comment portion of the meeting. Next item, supplemental plan restatement. I think this is yours, Tim.
It is. So I put a memo in the packet just to kind of orient folks to what's going on with this item. So this is a work item that we've kind of been working in the background on for the past 6 months or so with Empower. They approached us with a request to update our plan document. I should start by saying for the 403B plans, those are sort of unique among our supplemental plans, as I mentioned at the end of the memo, because rather than a single plan document being approved by the board for the plan, each of our participating schools enters into its own plan document agreement with Empower if it uses Empower. We negotiate the sort of opportunity to work with Empower as a state board, and we hold the contract with them. But unlike, for example, the 457 plan, where we adopt the specific plan document, for the 403B plans, each school that decides to join just has its own plan document with Empower. Sometimes those are legacy documents that they've kind of carried with them from provider to provider. Sometimes they're on a new Empower plan document. So for most of the work we're doing on this initiative, and it'll hit this board with its joint oversight of the single deposit investment account, we'll be looking at a plan document, updating it, and making sure that we're not inadvertently changing any provisions, that we've got all of the new bells and whistles from updated laws in them. And if there are any new features or anything that we think are worth the board's consideration, we'll bring them to the board for possible adoption. With the 403B plans, we're still working with Empower on what kind of a review might be useful. But what we sort of landed on with them is that it might be a useful exercise for us to go through sort of a model plan document that we could, that our office will have looked at and we can stand behind. And then if a school wanted to use that document, for example, they would know that we've taken a look at it. And, I think it would be like a service to the to those schools that participate on the 403B plan. And then they can customize it as they see fit. Maybe if we offer a feature that they don't want, or vice versa, they can customize it. So this is sort of a not insignificant piece of work that has been going on for a while. Part of our initial work has been to make Empower take more ownership of this process. What was initially, here are some new plan documents, just sign them. That level of review didn't work for us. And so we've had them do an in-depth review, identify where any changes might be, clearly articulate them, rep that no other changes are being made. And then we're having our consultants at RVK look over their shoulders and confirm that we are aware of any changes that are coming on. And then we'll bring them to our board. So you'll see the SDIA, as will the state board, for adoption But for the 403B plans, what we're thinking of doing is just bringing a model plan to you. I haven't quite worked out the contours of that one. Probably push that one off to the back of the project after we got some experience with the more traditional plan documents. But I wanted to just signal that that's work that's going on, and I'll bring it to you at some point over the next 3 to 6 months. And I just didn't want to bring a big plan document, drop it in the agenda, and you guys not have any idea what we're doing. If between now and then, you are looking at the document, or you have any thoughts, or you hear something about, hey, what about this feature? Is this, something to look at? Give me a shout. We'll look at it. We'll talk to Empower. We'll talk to RBK, and we can bring it to the board and see if we recommend inclusion and bring it to the board for consideration. But for now, I just wanted to flag that this is a work item that you should expect to see in the next 3 to 6 months, sort of as we slot in actuarial work over that time period.
Yeah,
Are there any
it'll be
questions?
interesting. Yeah, I do. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the 403B, because at the district level, there are boxes to check for whether or not you're going to do loans, and
Yeah.
whether or not you have a Roth. And so it really gets into the weeds of what the district will offer as options for the members. So at the state level, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they change between what we do at the state level versus what the local district has for a plan.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think for us, I'm not sure we need to do this work, but in talking to Empower, I do think, I don't know how much some of the individual districts are maintaining their documents. And so, just as a, hey folks, here's a document that we've looked at, and we think this structurally is a good document. Now you would still have to go through and make sure if you want this, these are the features we've included in here. You need to amend it if you didn't want them or wanted others. I don't know if there's an easy way to do that for districts. And so it's a little bit of a weirder work item here, but I'll report back on it. I think it's worth the effort, just to help districts that I imagine don't have, we have more resources to do retirement things in the retirement office.
Absolutely. And my understanding, I've been out of it for 6 years at the local level, but if you have a district that has multiple vendors and Empower is not the exclusive vendor, then say, for instance, Chittenden East, which was my district, we had multiple vendors. And so in discussion with our superintendent, Empower said, we can do your plan document for you. Would you like us to do that? And so we said absolutely, after having discussion with the superintendent. And we are at that point, we're also transitioning over to make Empower the the sole provider. But there are, if my understanding is, there's still some districts out there that have multiple vendors, and Empower doesn't do their plan document.
Yeah, the Empower only does a handful, actually, of the plan documents. Okay. And so I think it's not something I want to dive too deeply into, because this is, the way that we have it structured, it's each school's, right? But if there's a way we could do this in a responsible way, where we could offer some our participating entities a good go by, I always find value in that. If I know, like, I can trust this source and not have to get into like a regulatory morass myself,
I totally agree with you. And I think districts sometimes, when they see these plan documents, it's almost like, aluminum siding salesman's coming to your house. It's like, no, we don't want to talk about this at all.
Or you
they
just
write it out once, 20 years later, it's just like, we never need to look at it again. And so, anything we can do to support, to keep the 403 robust at some of these school districts, I totally agree. Totally agree. Excellent.
So this is, purely an FYI at this point, but it's something that's keeping us busy.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next item, VHI plan update and contract discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to do for this item is kind of go in two parts. One, Steve, as typical, is tracking how the plan is performing by working with Blue Cross and VHI to get claims data, so we can get a beat on how things are looking in advance of an upcoming renewal. So that material has been provided here. After that, I probably recommend that we go into executive session because I would like to talk briefly about our recommendation for how to approach the upcoming contract year that for the Medicare supplement plan and the non-Medicare population. It's the insurance plans that we currently have with VHI. We are working through how to approach the next year contract. And so we would recommend having that part of the discussion in executive session, if that works. So,
Absolutely.
so with the first part, I'll turn it over to Steve May to briefly walk us through how the plan has been performing over the last year and a half, with a particular focus on the last 2 months that reflect our most recent rate change from January and February.
Okay, so I'm just going to briefly go through and then we can take questions either as we're going through each of the pieces or at the end. Totally fine. This is a continuation of what we've provided in the past, just updated through the current month at the time that this was shared with you. So I do have March. Let me get my cursor in the right spot. I do have March. March was a more favorable month. So the total claims for the month of March developed at just over 1.2 million, creating a margin position for the month of 143,000.
Hey, Steve.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in, but I'm not sure. We might have a board. George, I'm not sure if you've ever seen this document yet, now that I think about it and how we track these. And I wonder if just like
I
a quick high
step
level.
back and just go high level.
Just,
Yeah,
yeah,
a
real
quick
quick.
overview would be great for me as I'm seeing it for the first time. I appreciate it.
Okay. Sorry for the assumption. So what we're trying to do is track on a monthly basis to give updates how the plan is running. We take the premiums that are charged by VHI times the number of members in their right categories and create that monthly premium. Then we track how claims are paid. Premiums covered the claims and the expenses. So the first part here is, what premium did you pay in that is supposed to cover the full cost of the plan? We had to pay out medical claims. We have to pay out prescription drug claims. This is the total of those two. And then we have expenses on top of that. So we do have a protection. This is stop loss and admin. So you pay your admin fees. VHI and Blue Cross Blue Shield run the plan. So we have a monthly fee that we pay them, again, times the number of people that month. And stop loss. So stop loss is a protection against our catastrophic claims. And the stop loss level is $750,000. So we're responsible for all claims in here that we're paying out up to 750, and then the insurance kicks in. We're part of a much bigger pool. It's a broader pool to spread large claims across. So having a high stop loss level is beneficial because it keeps the premiums down. We have state and federal taxes that we have to pay. We calculate what all that is. This rebate is shared at the time of rating, but we do track it on a per head basis. So this is based on your prescription drug utilization and the brand name drugs used. There is a rebate that comes back to VHI. Portion of that is associated with our membership and our utilization. So this is an estimate of what that rebate would be, and that's an offset to our cost. That's why it's negative. And then we have the VHI admin fee that we pay. So we track that separately. So your premium minus your total claims and expenses gives us our monthly margin or deficit position. We show that as a percentage, and then we also show the people on the plan and what the average claim per head on a monthly basis is, so we can kind of see any patterns or what's happening within that.
And so just from for George, that's the sort of going across the columns. for the rows, January through December 2025, that was under our prior rates. And then for these plans, we had somewhere near like a 20% increase.
It was
which
just under 20, like 19.6.
Yeah, so starting January 26, you can see the premium amounts jump up there, because we had a substantial increase in costs. So that's what we're doing here, and this helps us monitor how our plan's running and what to expect as we approach, what this tells you, as you see deficits every month, was that, clearly we were due for a rate increase come January because the plan wasn't recovering enough money to cover expenses. So that's like the overview of this chart, and it's something that Steve keeps track of and presents every so often, and specifically when we're thinking about how to approach upcoming contract negotiations or RFPs or things like that. He helps us. This is one of our tools to help understand our position.
And also, it's important to know that this is the under 65, so this does not include the group that is covered by HealthSpring, the over 65 Medicare group.
Totally separate. Totally
Right.
separate.
So we basically have two different groups. This is the VHI group, and then we'll be talking about the new group that's under HealthSpring.
Gotcha. I appreciate that overview. I think I'm up to speed now. Thank you.
Okay. So
Good.
to Tim's point, we saw what happened and what drove our large increase over these months in the last year. And then we had an almost 20% increase in 26. So we're really trying to keep an eye on, after that renewal, how is it affecting the health of the plan? Health is, if you're margin, you're healthy. If you're deficit, it's still unhealthy. Well, we're getting more healthy. We're still not in a positive. And then my statement to start was I did get March just the other day and was able to update it. And the March margin position is $143,000. So we had a stark turnaround in good experience in the month of March. And it almost eats up the whole thing here. On this part of the plan. This is the under 65 portion. And then just for comparison, what are the averages running here with these key statistics for the recent 12? And then what was the average that we had during the last complete policy year? So we can kind of see how things are moving. And again, these first 2 months, and now this is 1,205,000 with the favorable March. We can see that the per head cost is coming down, and that's evidenced in our margin or deficit position, and the deficit is becoming less. So that it's good movement with the 20% increase. This is the group that has the over 65. Now they buy their drugs separately, and they can't be, because of that, they can't be on one of those Medicare Advantage type plans. So they have the VHI over 65 plan. It's just medical. They don't have any prescription drugs. We have to keep them with VHI because they can't move to that other program with HealthSpring that we have. Same thing, premium minus your claims. We don't have prescription drug claims, as I said. We still have all the admin fees here. There's no rebates to be had because there's no drugs. And we can see that we're still off a little bit. We had a good January, a good February. And if I'm looking at the March was still a $46,000 deficit. So there's something still going on within this group where it's not recovering, or the experience is not as good as what we see for the under 65. So we'll continue to keep our eye here. Oh, we don't want that. See all my emails. Sorry, I'll reshare and put that on the screen. So then the other sheet is just the total. And the main thing on the total is that, again, with the update for March, now let me reshare. I went too far.
Yeah, one thing to notice that sometimes it's not immediately apparent from the sheet is that, if you look at the very far right column, the claims per member kind of hovers around 2,000 for the under 65 and around 200 for the Medicare plan. That's the difference between an under 65 non-Medicare plan and a Medicare plan without a drug component. So just in
So
terms of
under
raw
60
dollars, yeah.
There's a couple things in that. The reason this number is higher is one, because we're covering prescription drugs, but two, we don't have any subsidy from Medicare.
Right.
So when we drop down here, there's no drugs, but our medical costs are lower because Medicare is picking up 60% of the dollar. We're picking up after, we're supplementing Medicare. So these are the claims happening after Medicare is paying for their portion with the plan that we have in place. So there's a couple things going on there and why. And then our March, I won't go too far this time. When I get to the total, our March surplus in total is just over $96,000. So positive over 65 is supplementing the negative of, or positive under 65 is supplementing the negative of the over 65s. And in total, we had a March with a margin of $96,000. So what we want
Steve,
to track
when you're talking about totals, is this the total including VHI under 65 and then this over 65 and HealthSpring?
HealthSpring is not in this report. HealthSpring's totally
Okay, so it's just it's just the VHI total.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so the reason we start looking at this now, and we'll have updates to this, is we're approaching the renewal presentation from Blue Cross and VHI. So we want to keep an eye on what did our last renewal do for us? How is that affecting the health of the program? It's getting healthier. And what indication does that have for an expectation with the renewal?
So that's sort of the overview of how the plan's performing. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Oh, it looked like on the VSTRS 65, January was an anomaly.
Right. We were hoping it was a positive and
Well,
it wasn't an anomaly and it was just going to continue.
That was a trend I was hoping for.
Well, we'll see. I mean, March was still a little better. It wasn't 31. It wasn't down 31%.
No. I just looked at the, when you sandwich, December 25 and February 26, it's like, what? That it leaped out at me.
Yeah, definitely been some catch up here in the past year.
And look at what we saw last year too. It seems to be a pattern. At least we didn't jump up as high, the claims experience. To have a year later, claims still less than what they were February of the previous year, that means our trend in cost roughly February 20, we would expect that February 26 would cost 9% more if all things were equal. So we have less employees or retirees covered than we did in February of 25. No, we have more. So on a per head basis, we're lower. We just have, it looks like, less severe claims going on in what's happening here. So if you look at it, I would have expected this to be greater in February because we have more people and because trend cost increases, we could expect to be like a 9% increase. So there's positives out of that weird February or that February that is a deficit. Okay.
So with that, I think what I would do is recommend that the board pass a couple of motions to go into executive session to talk about the upcoming contracts. The first motion would be to move that to find that premature general public knowledge of health insurance contractual matters would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage.
Anyone willing to make that motion?
So moved, George.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving to executive session, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session.
With the second motion would be,
Oh, excuse me.
yeah, that's to make the finding. The second motion is to go into executive session to discuss contractual matters pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A1A.
Anyone willing to make that motion, please?
So moved.
So moved. Oh, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, one moment, Mr. Chair, as I secure the room.